Good to see you as well, Hunter. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure to have you both. First off, thank you for making the time, and thank you both for your service. It is a pleasure to speak with you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, and look at us, we're all cleaned up now. Before we were in like t-shirts and hoodies and hats, and now we're all in our suits and ties. I got a little, casual cardigan on today.
I like it. It's real smooth, Hunter.
Absolutely.
You're one to talk. You're one to talk, Philip. So before we jump into the questions at hand, gentlemen, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journeys. Philip, let's start with you a bit about where you came from, where you went, and where you are now.
Yeah, so I can go on for a long time here with over 30 years of a career, but I would say that I joined the Army when I was 17 years old, right? So my mother actually signed me away, and I knew the one thing I want to do is kind of live a life of service. I went into the intel profession, held positions at tactical, strategic, and national levels. And as on the tail end of my career, I really spent time as a capabilities developer, understanding Army requirements, how to align those requirements across .mil PF or doctrine, organization, training, material, leadership development, personnel and facilities, understanding all those nuances. But what happened for me there is that I really gained an appreciation of kind of the partnership between industry and the services, right? And I kind of learned that at that juncture in my career, I learned that military folks, we speak a certain way, and we expect sometimes for folks to just kind of understand us. And that drove my push to go back to school, where I
Mm.
followed kind of an IT degree, in order to ensure that I was properly communicating with industry, right? And make sure that we're talking apples to apples in order to kind of make a difference and inform them. And that really led to my transition and moving into Esri, where I began really on the technical side, thinking that I might be that coder, right? That I understood the requirements, I could probably code something.
Mm.
And I very quickly learned that I could do a lot more using my skills and the things I learned in the military. And so, yeah, that's me. I'll stop being a ham, Hamon. I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah.
Resident ham.
I know, right? Absolutely. No, thanks, Philip. I mean, it's funny. When you and we crossed paths in the military once or twice early on, and so Phil transitioned into Esri, I think about a year before I did. And kid you not, our careers are similar, right? The only difference is I started off in the Marine Corps, 17 years old, intelligence analyst, same exact thing. So we did similar jobs, but in different services. And even within Esri, as we joined Esri, I started off in the division that Phil's in now, and Phil started off on the product engineering side of the division, and we crossed paths inside of the company. And now I'm working on the technical side where Phil's working on the business side. But the one thing, giving my time with Esri and working with the software, also 30 plus years, is the fact that working with the software, I got a peek inside of Esri, and Esri core values of what the company really stands for, really personal line up with mine.
Mm.
So the transition and attraction to Esri was really personal as well as professional to me, because Esri is really about making a world a better place, and as in uniform, that's why we're here, and making that commitment at 17 years old, and still able to do it today. I don't even see it as a career job. It's just a way of life.
You don't look a day over 18.
A little bit of makeup,
Yeah, that AI filter of just like, just smooth out my appearance, right? Thank you, Zoom. So, Jamon, I would love to start with you. What skills from your military service have been most valuable in your current role?
I think for me, it's leadership, right? And leadership starts and comes in all different shape and forms. And I think the one part of leadership that when most folks think about leadership, especially what I really saw in corporate was this authoritative type figure, but actually is the opposite. It's really about the ability to serve and the ability to influence, and influence others to get the best version of themselves. So learning that in the Marine Corps, from day one, and you're stepping in those your yellow footprints, through running through the hills of Quantico as I transitioned as an officer. Those are like really the hallmarks of really that allows you to tackle and do anything, but more importantly, not as an individual, but as a team. And when you're able to bring that level of experience and passion, enthusiasm to a company, when they're struggling with writing a piece of code, of trying to build a widget, or getting frustrated because a product missed a release date and time, you're able to bring a sense of calm and a sense of purpose in the room. And those attributes are very, very priceless, but they're very, very valuable in allowing an organization to achieve their mission objectives.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about you, Phil? What skills from your military service have been most valuable to your career?
Yeah, so I would say everything, right? I will tell you, as veterans, we're honed in, right? So there's a reason why we are the best fighting force in the world, right? And that's because we train folks and we develop folks to not just perform a task, but to lead and think independently, right? And we've learned how to communicate up and down the streams in order to ensure mission accomplishment. I like to say soldier for life very often, because the ideas of loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage, all of those things are your character, your values, right? And it's those values that we hone in, right? And so when you make the transition to industry, those things don't change. You get to apply those in very different ways. One thing that I like to share very often is this idea of personal courage, right? And so in the military, we run across a lot of obstacles. Doesn't matter what field you're in. My son's an airborne ranger sitting at Fort Liberty today. He's a combat medic. And I will tell you that his obstacles may be a little bit different than mine, but he's facing obstacles. And he's learned to think under pressure, right? And be able to focus to get things done. And I would say when you come to industry, just the same way you transition across rotations and you go to different assignments through your career, you're going to have different tasks in front of you, and you're going to need to learn, and you're going to need to adapt, and you're going to need to be able to apply yourself and look at problems objectively, apply yourself, and go after it. And so, for me, one of the things that led me to my transition into our business development, as Jamon mentioned, right, wasn't that I wasn't good at really doing technical things. It's that I found purpose, right? My purpose was giving back to those in the uniform. And I learned that it doesn't matter how great the code is, you still need to have contracts in place and mechanisms by which to get that into those that are, actually sacrificing, right? In order to make our world a better place. And I found the opportunity within business development. I was very fortunate to be able to continue making that difference. And so my team right now is doing, they're applying all those core values and all those lessons learned. I have folks from across the services, and they're going after it. They're spending time all over the world understanding the pain points of our veterans and being able to actually deliver solutions that support them.
And I imagine some of the structure and following of systems that you learned in your service have transferred over into these business contracts that you're speaking to.
100%. And so, we don't claim to be domain experts, right? So when I was in the uniform, I might have called myself a domain expert, right? But what you learn is empathy, right? I think it's something that you naturally have, but empathy is very important, right? And so when you go in and you meet with these service members and you understand their pain points, it's not about telling them how you did it. It's about, how do I help you? The same way you were in uniform. How do I help you move that rock? Or how do I help you get that task accomplished? Or how do we form plans to be able to execute effectively together, right? And
Mhm.
that empathy, I think, differs a lot of service members, right? You have this bond that just doesn't go away, right? I remember being on vacation in Panama, and I ran into somebody I served with in Hawaii, and they introduced me to somebody else, and right away it was just a natural connection, and then we began to talk work, right? It's just kind of the way it goes, right? Because your compass doesn't change, right? Your moral compass doesn't change. You know what you're committed to, and the things that you want to do, which is help our service members.
Yeah. Jamal, I'd love to hear your take on developing a deeper sense of empathy through service and how that's transferred into your career life.
Absolutely. I would say one of the most critical asset and skills that we have as service men and women is the fact that we have this selfless duty to serve. And when you apply that to when software is being developed, we don't make tech for tech purpose for tech, right? The tech is made for a purpose. And that purpose is solving someone's problem, making someone's job much easier. And I said, in the company, I manage several teams across different verticals. And, when we're in our board meeting rooms and boardroom meetings, and our owner, Jack, is, he's talking, we going through, whatever product release, status of certain products. And the one question, we talk about anything from adoption and sales numbers and, how well it's working. But the one thing he always pivots to is like, who's using it? Are they actually using it? Right. And part of, I really get excited about that because as a service member, the thing that we really bring to the table in this particular domain is that you are the user, right? You understand those different pain points. So transition to a tech company, unless you are specifically tied, to like a very technical job career field in the services, you may find yourself sitting at the table with, folks that have, different level degrees from different areas of, pedigrees from, whatever college, university went through of, writing code. But none of that really matters if that code is not written to solve someone's problem. And the types of problems that, as a service member, as Phil mentioned, regardless of what branch you're in, what you're doing, many of those complex problems can be applied to some type of military operation or support. When you're able to speak to that sincerely, because you've been there or you witnessed that, and you've probably put the technology in through paces that no one even think about as they're going through, conceptual design, architectural reviews. And you can bring that human factor. It solves so many things inside of the organizations. It gives the individuals who's developing the technology purpose, right? And also gives the end users, and sometimes it's back to the same organization you came from. They're excited, they're happy. And I think all that begins with this whole, this sense of, service and a sense of empathy about being very connected to the problem which you're trying to solve. And those are valuable attributes that are truly priceless, right? But it's so valuable to the organizations from the way in which the product is being talked about, how we position a piece of technology while we're building that piece of technology, how that piece of technology is going to solve problems. It really, in my opinion, really starts there. And as a service individual, you bring so much to the table, and being able to reach into those unique experiences and communicate that to your team that you're working with in these tech industry companies. They get so excited of having you part of the team, and in most cases, they ask me, Jamon, do you have anybody else in your network that operates like you, like think like you? So it opened so many different doors.
I love that. I love hearing that. Phil, can you speak to what are some of the biggest challenges you face transitioning from military service into this new career path?
Yeah, so great question, Hunter, right? So what every veteran who's probably on the line is probably thinking right now, how do my skills translate, right? And what's my worth, right? And so Jamon just kind of, he very eloquently painted this picture, which really stemmed around context. You are the context that industry needs to help our warfighters. You are that, right? And so when you talk about the biggest challenges for me, I struggled through the same exact thing, Hunter. What's my worth, right? And I had some great mentors, and they told me, Phil, you can chase three things. You can chase money, which it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You can chase a title because many service members, after having such a distinguished career, you want to land that role that says, I've made it, because you know, you've been looking out at industry, watching folks walk around with suits and ties all day long, and you want one of those titles, right? Or you can chase what you can affect,
Mm,
right? A role that allows you to actually affect something, that gives you the autonomy to go after it. And that's what Esri did for me, right? Esri gave me an opportunity to say, hey, we're going to take some of your context and your understanding, and we're going to apply it against, Jack would say, the president of our company, who would say, I envision Esri as a place where individuals can live out their life's work, where they can make a difference, right? And so for me, transitioning, I really was focused on how do I make a difference, right? And so what I will tell you is the most important thing you can do as you begin to transition is ensure that you follow up on your education. Your education is very vital to the equation, right? You have great experiences, a lot of uniqueness, but your education is something you really need to follow through on. You may want to think about, depending on once you know what you want to do, you might want to think about what other things change my position or my standing across the community. If you know the community, find the things that matter, agile development, right? Or agile certifications, right? If you're looking at tech, if you want to go into operations, you might want to think about PMP or Lean Six Sigma. These types of things are very beneficial and will help you on your transition, right? Because it's not that your military skills don't bring anything to the table, is that you want to make sure that you continue to differentiate yourself. So my challenges were exactly those things. And, I had a great set of mentors along the way. I would encourage everyone, find mentors, right? Find those that can help guide you through the process. You're worth a lot. The challenges you're going to face, I mean, is also going to be kind of a bit of culture, right? So within an industry, there is a little bit of a different culture, right? They value our veterans, right? Our veterans bring a lot to the table, but the culture is different, because in the military, you perform with a sense of urgency, right? And so everything is a priority right then and there at a moment's notice. Within the corporate world, and particularly in industry, there are things that you have to thoroughly plan out. Software development doesn't happen overnight. Engagements with your customers to help them and be able to drive that. You're not sitting in the seat every day with those service members, right? And so you have to be a little bit more strategic in that sense, as opposed to the very deliberate type of actions you would kind of execute in uniform beyond the planning, for movement and maneuver and things like that.
there's so much good stuff in there. I'm curious, how did you seek out a mentor or mentors, and how do you suggest folks do that now once they're transitioning out, or maybe are still in and are looking ahead?
Yeah, so that's a good one, right? For me, finding my mentors, so so I think first we should start with defining the mentor, Hunter, right? So right, so when we talk about mentorship is not someone telling you what you should do with yourself. Mentorship is about looking up, finding individuals that you feel have made good decisions under tough circumstances, right? And having those discussions with those individuals to help inform the decisions you would make, right? So for me, there were quite a few folks that I looked up to over the years that I was able to reach out that successfully transitioned, right? So find those that you want to be more like, right? Um, and you just reach out to them and you go, I really value what it is you do, and I would appreciate gaining some understanding of how you come to some of those decisions or how I should frame my ideas around certain problems and challenges. And they might give you some homework. Do the homework, go back. Mentorship is not about your mentor reaching out to you. Mentorship is about you reaching out to your mentor, right? In order to make sure that you're getting the things you need, right? So that's kind of the approach that I took, is finding others like me. And as you continue to grow, your mentor today doesn't have to be your mentor tomorrow. No, there's no limit on the number of mentors, right? So I have mentors that are very senior within government. I have mentors that are very senior within industry. That some of them I've known a long time. Some of them I've begun engaging as I've been working in industry to really learn a bit more. It's one of the things that drove me back to following up my education now with Keenan Flagler School of Business, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Go Heels, right? So mentors will push you, but you're going to have to put in that work.
Yeah, it's so important, right? And I love that you're saying that it's not their responsibility to reach out to you. It's not their responsibility to make decisions for you. It's they have something that you want, and maybe it aligns with what your mentor said to you about something you can be actionable about, something you can make change in and make your mark. And then you got to put in the effort, and then they'll guide you and they'll be your sounding board, and they can be like, well, I'm 10 years down the road or years down the road from you. This is my experience with that type of plan.
Yeah, which is interesting, right? Because there's this idea of mentorship, and there's this notion of a sponsor,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so sponsors are very different. You don't get to pick your sponsors. Sponsors go, I believe in this person. I see how they work. I value the things that they do, and I'm going to be an advocate for them behind the scenes,
Yep.
right? That would also enable you across lateral movements, across organizations and things like that. And veterans, right? Veterans, we've always been learning from somebody else, right? Sergeant's time training in the Army is it's for soldiers, it's by soldiers for soldiers, right? So and that's across every service, and we've been doing this for a long time, right? And it doesn't change when you get out. You just have to be more deliberate. You just have to be
Yeah.
a bit more deliberate.
Yeah. Yeah. Jamon, I'm curious, what's an unexpected lesson you learned while adapting your military skills to the tech world that you think other veterans might identify with and also perhaps might be caught off guard if they didn't see it coming?
That's a very challenging question. I think one of the things is understanding yourself, right? A lot of times, I mean, not a lot of times, a majority of times, in the military, we're trained to work as a team. Like, there's no concept of individualism. And that's why the services works, right? There's no one person who's going to accomplish a mission. And that's very, very valuable when we're looking at execution missions inside of the services. But then there's a little bit of drawback with that. And the drawback is that throughout that process, we don't know how to talk about ourselves, right? And when you can't talk about yourself, a lot of times the way in which we show our values is through actions. But you don't get afforded the opportunities to demonstrate those actions if you can't articulate what you're actually bringing to the table. And the services don't train us how to communicate about us. how to write about ourselves, to talk about the things we accomplish. We're great at talking about the buddy to the left, to the right of us, but we struggle at talking about ourselves. And that was took me a while to really like figure that out. And I had a couple of, going back to the mentor conversation. In this particular case, it wasn't a mentor that was up above me, right? It was someone that was, below me, right?
Mm-hmm.
According to the organizational structure. So that person was in industry much longer than I was. And they communicate that to me. And I like, wow, didn't realize that. Jamal, you don't talk enough about yourself. People don't know these things. Right? So that was one of the areas in which I think was unexpected. Me always leading with, the team first approach, that my supervisor will witness what I'm doing, because I'm doing all these great things. And I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to communicate it. So therefore they'd know. And actually they had no clue on what was going on. And it became a barrier for me early on. And then once I realized that was a challenge and a barrier in overcoming that, it completely put me in a different trajectory in the company. So yeah, I would say that. I do want to go back to one of the questions that you mentioned when Phil was talking about challenges, but I don't want to talk about the challenges on the concept of, what my skills are transitioning to the tech company. This statement here is really about those spouses out there, right? As a opportunity to transition. And one of the challenges outside of, my work and what I'm doing today is something simple, right? And I have this conversation a lot with other veterans about, but understanding, the medical care system, right? We're very spoiled, right? We're in the services, we get sick, our family gets sick, like there's no concept of insurance, and then those different things. So as you begin to think about transition and looking at these different level of tech companies, the things that we take for granted, they're not automatic in some of the tech companies. Now, fortunately for Esri, it lines really well on how you operate inside of the services. But make sure that you're preparing yourself through and through, right? Preparing yourself as an individual and what you want to do into the tech company, and also looking at those different things inside of the tech company that may impact your family, because you will need that network more than ever.
Yeah. So I'm just going to share with our audience that a recording of folks from Freddie Mac is going to start in just a moment. But I do want our conversation here so we can put a pin on our conversation, but just know that there is a recording that's going to be playing. And then we can also finish our conversation as well. So that makes a lot of sense, Jamon. And I think it's so important for folks to hear that and remember that it's beyond the service members, it's the family members, it's the unit that goes beyond it. It really is this community impact that a lot of people are affected by.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with just a couple of minutes, as we wrap up here, I'm curious, was there any, Phil, we can jump back over to you. Are there any resources or networks that you would recommend to veterans seeking roles in tech? And how did Esri, how did their resources support you?
Yeah, so I would say that there are a lot of resources out there. Esri in particular, we have a strong veteran network within it. And I think we're also, the culture within Esri is supportive of each other, right? So I think our service members naturally help each other navigate through whatever challenge that might be. I would say from a resource perspective, I think folks transitioning out should really be thinking more broadly, right? I think that the different experiences as folks transition is probably the most important thing to share across the different service members, right? Because everyone's transition might be a little bit different, right? just a little bit different. And those experiences and how you deal with it, or I don't even want to say deal, because that's probably an awful way to phrase this. But how they handle and navigate through those circumstances are incredibly valuable. I mean, even as I transitioned out of the Army, and I came in, as to Jamal's point around, medical and insurance and those type of things, I had a buddy who said, "Hey, this is kind of the way it works. Let me help you through this," right? And sure enough, my wife was on that journey with me, right? And one thing I would say, because I know we're short on time, but I want those online to kind of hear this, right? And this is straight from my heart, right? Give yourself a little bit of grace. Transitioning out of the military can be daunting. It's a change in lifestyles, potentially changing location. It changes family circumstances, all the dynamics that go on with it. And you don't have to get it right. You don't have to get it completely right. Give yourself a little bit of grace. Where you start doesn't need to be where you end, right? I came in on the technical side, transitioned to business development because my passion was focused into engaging directly with those end users, and those end users are our service members, right? And so their problems are real close to me, and it took me a little bit to find out. I mean, I was still making an impact for our service members on the technical side, helping build technology, but it's a journey, right? There's chapters. You turn the page, you remember the things that were on the pages before, and you start writing a new one, right? And so give yourself a little bit of grace. You've sacrificed a lot. Be proud of the things you've done over your career, and turn the page and continue to adjust, adapt, and learn as you go, right? Lifelong learning is very, very important.
Well, on that note, I think there's no way better to close the book than that. Thank you both so much for giving your time, your expertise, your empathy in this conversation. I really appreciate you both. Thank you both for your service. What is the best way for folks to reach out and keep the conversation going with you? If they have any follow-up questions, maybe if they're looking for a mentor.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Jamal.
Yeah, for me, I mean, LinkedIn is probably the quickest and fastest way to reach out to me personally. And if you can reach out to anyone inside of Esri, they can find me. So I think it's probably the quickest, fastest way to get a hold of me. And I'm absolutely open to share any of my experiences with you guys to ensure that you have a smooth transition out of the services.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and for those, for me, you can certainly get a hold of me on LinkedIn. For those of you with experience in acquisition and C4ISR, I'm looking for some folks as well. So I'll just throw that out there. I mean, Esri is about bringing in our veterans to do some of the toughest jobs. So definitely appreciate the time, Hunter. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Take care now.